Yeah. So what do you think, man? I read a lot about the history of a lot of bands, and I'm also a huge fan of the Smashing Pumpkins, obviously, because who isn't? And I love Ava Adore, but it's very different from Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Yeah.
And I was reading about how something to the effect. I don't want to speak too much on what I'm not an expert on or anything, but Billy Corgan, he makes this album. It's mind blowing. It's this double album. It's huge. All these songs on it are so amazing. And then they come out with this new album. It's very different, and it's because there's this belief that guitar music is on the way out.
Right.
But I hear that story from so many different bands where at some point this band got big, then believed, quote unquote, guitar music's on the way out, changed their sound, and then
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go back 20 years ago. Rolling Stone every 2 years would have the cover of, oh, this band's going to save rock and roll. Like it was the Vines, and then it was,
Yeah.
the Strokes. And so it was always like, you can't lift it back up if you don't tear it down. So it was like rock music, guitar music, it's on the outs, it's on the outs. Oh, it's back, now it's on the outs. Oh, no, there's this new band. So I don't know.
it does kind of feel like I don't know, in a down period, would you say?
I mean, it's felt like that for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Certain bands can put something out and it's going to cut through no matter what. But yeah, I don't know. It definitely got very synth heavy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, like probably one of my favorite bands of all time is Metric.
dude, that
And
band's cool.
yeah, their early stuff is kind of Pixies-ish, indie. I don't know how you describe it. Rock.
Oh, okay, yeah, I just know their bigger songs mostly.
Yeah, their modern stuff is more electro. Like their new album Formentera is very synth heavy. Like and their past albums have been very, very. I don't know. I'd almost call it like indie pop, synth or something.
Right.
Whereas Combat Baby is kind of a grungy indie rock song, and that was a song that was I think like 2001 or something, and it was on the iPod. It was like a big release, I guess. I don't know. They're not the biggest band in the world or anything like that, but I think they're absolutely fantastic.
I played festivals with them before. They're fantastic live.
That's what I hear. Yeah. I hear they're like one of the best live shows to go to.
It was like, oh shit, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. But now, even the music we're doing is the weirdest thing because we put out a song, Only Ever Wanted, and people are like, it's a dated sound, it's old, and I'm like, I guess, but I don't care, man. I made a song, you don't have to like it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was kind of what I guess like the mainstream corporate narrative was. It's old,
Right.
and it's like, so what do we got to do? Do we got to do like a dance techno song to like fit the modern era or whatever?
I know. It just seems like everything needs to be pigeonholed and put into a box, and it's all so boring. It's like, oh, well, you can't have that sound because it sounds like 90s or whatever. And it's like, so what? It's music, it's art, it's subjective. You don't have to like it. But to say you shouldn't have done that is crazy to me. It's like you're an artist. You're making something. If somebody doesn't like it, that's okay. I mean, that's how it goes. You don't have any control over that, but I feel like as an artist, you should do what you enjoy. And yeah, there's a responsibility to the audience to an extent, but you also get to do what you want.
Yeah, especially if you've been successful and you just have fuck you money.
Yeah, dude, I've been through it twice with Face to Face and Saves the Day. Both bands, I came in on their fourth album. Both albums a big departure from their previous sound, and both times just polarized the audience. And, I think the Face-to-Face record, Ignorance is Bliss, it's looked back on now like, oh, damn, that record still holds up. It's cool. But at the time, it was very different than their punk rock thing. And, it probably should have been more of like a side project, but nobody did those back then. And we talked about it. We were like, oh, maybe we should put this out under a different name, and then we can go make a Face-to-Face record. But, record labels and things are like, no, you got to use your name and whatever. And then,
Yeah, it's weird because the idea is like the brand will sell no matter what.
Right.
If you've got a big brand, you can put out an album that's just chicken box. People will buy it. They'll get pissed off,
Yeah.
but you got the money.
Right.
It's like I remember when Pirates of the Caribbean 2 came out, Dead Man's Chest, and I think that movie's shit.
Yeah, that was tough.
The first one's awesome.
Yeah.
And so they were probably just like, who gives a fuck? Just slap it all together, slap the name on it, we make money. Yeah. And then they come out and they say, made even more money than the first one. Right. And I'm like, yeah, because the first one was good.
Right, but
and
the
rest
lesson
of them were
learned is
bad.
not that making a subpar version made more money. Let's make an even worse one.
That's all they keep doing.
Yeah.
And then they were like, we're going to do an all-female reboot, I guess, with like Margot Robbie. I just feel like everyone's fucking lost their minds.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting thing about how music goes. So I was always fairly pragmatic when it came to music, in that, you know, I listen to The Offspring, and then I get into more skate punk stuff related because I'm skateboarding, and you get Bad Religion, and then the Tony Hawk 2 soundtrack obviously was huge. Everyone loved it. Goldfinger, Millencolin. And then, you know, like I mentioned, like we're getting into the indie phase starts coming in. But I was always fairly like, look, man, pop music's fun. You know, you can act like you're this cool kid who knows the secret band no one's ever heard of, but that's fine. If you're a fan of this indie band no one's ever heard of, and you're like, oh, you know, I'm a fan of, you know, the Paper Airplane Trio, you never heard of them, it's whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like, don't act smug about it. You're allowed to like what you like. But come on, pop music is fun. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like Taylor Swift is fun.
Absolutely.
Sia is fun. It's fun music. I think Sia is actually great. And Taylor Swift has got some good, like, it's fun music. So, you know, I'm listening to pop punk stuff, the Decadence stuff, the Fueled by Ramen stuff. And there are a lot of people who are like punk purists who are like, punk is dead. They got mad at Green Day and all that shit. And it's just weird to me because it's like, do your thing, be original, build the culture, and then recognize what it is that people like about this pop stuff. But there is a kind of fear, I suppose, that there's the corporatization of the culture, which could kill it or rip its soul out.
Yeah.
And so like skateboarding, for instance, you know, goes hand in hand with a lot of this punk stuff. Skateboarding in the 90s and the 80s was, my understanding, you were a weirdo. Yeah, if you were doing this stuff, you were a goofy weirdo. Like, what are you doing? Then all of a sudden, Tony Hawk lands the 900, and now there's video games, and it's the coolest shit ever.
Yeah.
And then there was a fear that it would lose its core, you know, and it would become corporate. Kind of did. You get these bigger companies coming in, but it still has maintained that kind of, you know, skateboarding has still maintained some degree of it, but now that it's Olympic, the Olympics were really scary. It was like, this is it. You're going to get kids in unitards being trained by, you know, multimillionaire companies, and this rebel lifestyle is going to die along with it.
Yeah, well, when anything gets a little too big, then it gets co-opted. You know, you get corporations when there's money to be made, everyone comes in, and then the thing that you loved is changed because too many people start getting their fingers in the pot, and it's not what it was anymore. And you know, that happens with bands, it happens with skateboarding. I mean, poker, you know, poker didn't used to be cool, and then all of a sudden 20 years ago, you know, that one random dude won World Series of Poker, and then everybody's like, oh, poker's awesome.
Matt Damon did a movie about it.
Right, yeah.
And everyone
all of a
was
sudden,
like,
yeah, the celebrity poker shows on TV and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, same thing with comic books and Star Wars. You know, when I was a kid, you'd get slapped around. Like, I love Star Wars. I still have all my action figures and stuff.
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, OG Star Wars, but
Yeah.
oh man.
But I'm just saying, like, and nowadays it's like, yeah, of course, cool. No, yeah. It's fine, but you know, you liked comic books when you were a kid, and you get beat up for that kind of thing. And now it's very mainstream.
It feels like it's hitting everything though. Like culture is stagnating. Everything feels corporatized and plastic and busted up. And I don't know, man.
Well, but everything is under only a few umbrellas. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you can break it down into smaller companies, but it's all overtly owned by the same, you know, big corporations. So everything gets, you know, taken over.
All of this kind of goes hand in hand, I guess. Like the first story we're talking about with you and The Offspring, and the corporatization of culture and stuff like that. I'm thinking about it, and it feels like you mentioned, you know, should Face to Face put out an album that's just like their music, or should they have a departure? And then the label's like, just put it out under the brand because it'll sell. And that's what it feels like. It feels like, you know, a band like The Offspring says, look, ain't nobody got our back, so we ain't got nobody else's back. Take the paycheck and shut the fuck up. And it feels like that's not unique to this one band. It's everybody is in the space where they're like every man for themselves.
That's everywhere. I mean, that
sucks.
That's the business. You've got to navigate, you know, your way around. And for me, this was my first and last foray into just being like a featured player in a group where, I was always like a member of the band before. I was always writing and contributing and feeling creative. And, that's not always the case. And that's not always a bad thing. Like, at the time I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I don't have to have an opinion. I don't have to think. I just show up, I do my script and do my job, and that's cool. And it worked great for a long time. And then you get out of there and you're kind of like, oh man, I wasn't very creative at all. I didn't feel like I was.
Autopilot.
Yeah, and there's situations where, yes, you are paid for your ability on your instrument, but you're also paid for your ability to do what you're told.